was thinking, I actually had something else to start with, but then it seemed like we got for me personally, a very powerful reminder out of nature this week as to all the things that God teaches us from the things we see every day. A week ago tomorrow, you remember we had a huge storm that blew through Abilene. A lot of wind. In fact, some were thinking we had something, if not close to, it was a distant cousin of tornadoes in our city. A lot of powerful wind. The trees were down, and I went in on Tuesday, and Tom Goebel, who probably sees more things than I see. Tom was pointing out, I said, Tom, see all those trees down, all those big trees that had fallen down. And Tom made this observation. I tend to think big, mighty trees that got blown down by the wind. Tom said, yeah, you can almost see with every one of the trees that lost a limb or that fell over, there was a rot or a weakness in that tree. And that makes sense. I mean, it's not like you get this mighty tree that was without any weakness. The storm found its greatest susceptibility in those places where there was weakness. So when the winds blew, the places that were weak were the places where there was fallenness. So, but that kind of gets me ready to talk about something out of Galatians today. And I've got a passage that I'm really excited to be talking about. Because again, it's a simple, out of what we see every day, lesson. And I'm a simple guy, and I love to be able to talk about things that are pretty straightforward, that don't require you to be able to say, well, we need to think about that for a long, long time, man. This is again, something right out of the world that we see every day. If you want to follow along, it's in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Here's what we read. Don't be deceived. Kind of a challenge here as Paul's wrapping up. He says, don't be deceived. God cannot be mocked. The way I translate that in my mind is he's saying, let me just make one thing really clear. You don't put things over on God. You may think you're really smart. You may think you got, a cleverness about you, but let me just remind you, God is able to be in and through all things. You don't mock God. People reap what they sow. Those who sow to please their sinful nature, from that nature they will reap destruction. Those who sow to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. I got a couple of quick points that I think are found in this portion of the Bible that, to me, give us something to kind of walk out the door with. It's something right out of our experience in life. Paul starts out saying, first of all, as we've already touched on, God is not mocked. God is a God of grace and love and mercy, and that's clearly who and what he is. That is his nature. But at the same time, we do not put things over on God. And God will call us into account for the things we do. That's just pretty simple and straightforward. It doesn't mean God's not loving us. It just means that's the way God is. He is straightforward in his expression of justice. So there are two things that we see out of here. They're kind of laws of nature. They're the things that if you're a gardener or somebody like me who doesn't even garden that much, you're going to pick up on this. The first thing is what you sow is what comes out of the ground. What you sow is what's going to grow. We put it this way. For Vann, if you put a tomato seed in the ground, you should not expect corn to come up, right? There you have it. Real simple. If you plant tomatoes, you're going to get tomatoes. If you plant corn, you're going to get corn. You said, that's really simple, Vann. Well, this is really simple. What you put in the ground, what you plant, is what's going to come up. That's the first kind of law of the harvest, law of the sowing, all that. What you put in the ground is what's going to grow. And Paul makes this point here. He says, if you plant, if what you're planting is to the flesh, and he's already talked about earlier some of the things that are expressions of that. If you plant according to hatred, fits of rage, and selfishness, that's what's going to grow up. Simple as it is. You can't plant tomato seeds and expect to grow corn. You can't put envy and hatred in the ground and expect the Spirit to grow out of that. That's the first one. Now he comes back and says, if you plant according to the Spirit, you should and will expect that what grows out of that's going to be things of the Spirit. And he's already talked about that. Love, joy, peace, patience. We know those as the fruit of the Spirit. Those are real simple but profound thoughts, Paul. He's saying what you plant, what you sow, is what you're going to get. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Second truth is there will be a reaping. There will be a harvest. If you put it in the ground, it's going to someday, at some point, perhaps not in your exact timing, there will be a harvest. Things will grow. There will be a reaping. That's kind of the second law of the harvest. Now, one of the things we know from our own personal experience is things never move for a lot of us fast enough. They never grow fast enough. I can remember, probably you've seen those little things with kids in their first grade class when they put the seeds in the little seed pods, and they come in the next day and they want to know if it's all grown. And you know, they're discouraged because it's been 24 hours and what they planted is not already grown. The law of the harvest says if you put it in the ground, it is eventually going to grow and be there to be reaped, but it's not going to be on your timetable or my timetable necessarily. Two truths again, because they're real simple, but they're really important. What we plant is what we're going to get. What we put in, if we plant according to the flesh, we will reap out of the flesh. If we plant according to the Spirit, we will reap according to the Spirit. That's God saying, listen, some of us say, why did this happen? You know, I've been doing all this bad stuff, and you know what came out of it? Bad stuff for me. That's the law of the harvest. It's not like God is being evil or mean. He's saying in our lives there are certain things that are just truths, and when you plant to the flesh, you're going to see eventually when the harvest comes, you're going to see that the end result are things of the flesh, and that will lead to destruction. You plant according to the Spirit, you're going to reap a harvest. When the harvest comes, things of the Spirit. That's. You say, Vann, is that it? That's so simple. Yeah, it is profoundly simple, the truth here that we have. This is gospel. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. What we plant is what we will reap. And there will be a harvest time. There's kind of a tag on, but it's important here that Paul brings at the conclusion of the thoughts he shares. Don't grow weary then. A lot of us, if you're in the middle of a harvest, you may say, well, nothing's come up, nothing's sprouted, nothing's happening. I'm going to give it up. I'm going to go home. He says, don't grow weary, because at the proper time, there will be a harvest. And then he kind of puts everything for us. If you say, what are we supposed to be doing today? What's the call for us today? I love the simplicity, again, of Paul's challenge to us in the gospel. Therefore, if you have, and as you have opportunity, do good to all people. I can get my head wrapped around that. Do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Do today, if we want to begin to reap a harvest according to the Spirit, what do? We're here, Vann. Here's a real straightforward, simple thing. Go do good. Can you figure that one out too? I can get that one. Go do good. What do we do tomorrow if we want to reap a harvest of righteousness? We do good. And then there's kind of that tag on, and we try to live that out here at our church. We try to let that start among the family of believers. One of the reasons that we take a collection and we say we want to turn as much of that quickly back into our community here is because we want to do good to the family of believers. We want to pray with, we want to encourage the family of believers here. What do I do? What do I do? I should do. You should do good. Here's a real simple recap. This is a simple lesson. I am a simple person. Here's the recap of the lesson. What we put in the ground, what we plant, is what's going to grow. What you plant is what's going to grow. There will be a harvest. There will be a reaping time. Count on it. It's going to happen. If you plant and live according to the flesh, that's what's going to spring out of the ground, and there will be a harvest on that. If you plant and live according to the Spirit, there will be a harvest out of that. Two real simple truths there. Then the encouragement, then the challenge is do good. Go and do good to all people, and especially show that to the family of believers. That's the gospel message today. That's the word of the Lord. So as you leave, as we go, here's the call. We are people who are bathed in, covered up in forgiveness and grace. But we are still making decisions, each one of us, according to certain things that God says, you're not going to put one over on me. These are truths. Go do good, especially the family. Glad you came to Bar Church today. If you are here today and you're saying, man, I'd like to know more about Jesus, look for some of us who have Bar Church t-shirts on. That's why we wear these, because we want to be identifiable. If you say, I got a question, I want to know a little bit more, that's why we're doing that. But we're also here just to celebrate. We're here to celebrate that we serve a great God.